Welcome to Lookouts and Waterfalls in the Blue Mountains, episode 17, Let Our Videos Be Your Guide. In this episode, we return to Leura to visit a number of lookouts over Leura Glen. Hello and welcome. If you're new to us, I'm Graham.
And I'm Jeff.
We've arrived at the Solitary Restaurant car park and about to walk the 50 metres to Kiah Lookout, further along Cliff Drive. After that, we'll walk down to Copeland Lookout. Then we'll follow on to Bridalvale Lookout. And finally, we'll find our way to Majestic Lookout on a short side track off the round walk. We'll see all that shortly, but first, these are the roads we followed to get to the walking track.
We have followed the M4 motorway from Sydney onto the Great Western Highway and will take the Katoomba exit 46 kilometres from the bridge over the Nepean River. If your vehicle has a trip meter, set it to 0 as you exit the highway. At 120 metres at the roundabout, turn left onto Bathurst Road. Proceed straight if you wish to avoid Katoomba's main street. At 280 metres, turn right around a second roundabout into Katoomba Street. After 850 metres, turn left at the roundabout. At 1 kilometre, turn right into Leura Street. At 1.2 kilometres, turn left into Leura Street. Continue along Leura Street until merging with Cliff Drive at 1.7 kilometres. Proceed straight and after travelling 1.8 kilometres at the corner of Warren Street, take the forward side road and find a spot to park. Since we are going to the Solitary Restaurant, we'll stop in the restaurant car park.
If that's not enough, we'll show you the panoramic view from the Solitary Restaurant, and after we start the walk, we'll show you Fossil Rock. We have a guest with us today. He'll walk with us, and you might see him during the video. His name is Brian.
That's enough for now. Let's just do it.
While we are here, I'll tell you a little story of the history of the Solitary Restaurant. By the beginning of 1900, the value of tourist destinations had become an important asset to Katoomba and Leura. Shelter sheds and comfortable bush houses for old folk were being constructed along the walking tracks, and this place was no exception. The end of the ridge upon which the Solitary Restaurant now stands was first occupied by a bush hut called Mr. Bundy's Oriental Tea Kiosk. There was no cliff drive in those days, just a walking track that was later widened to accommodate horse and cart. The dirt track from Katoomba was named Merriwa Street and followed this side of the road, straight to the kiosk. It made a sharp left turn and continued downhill to the Leura Cascades you saw in episode 16. In March of 1900, a magnificent vantage point, then called Leura Falls Point, upon which the kiosk stood, had been railed and cleared, adding to Leura's many interesting sights. Bundy's Bush Kiosk provided exotic Chinese teas and even hot water for the tourist billy for over 4 years, until in May 1904 the park trustees called for tenders to lease the refreshment kiosk for 1 year. Apparently the tea business was not paying well, as it took until November of 1911 for a new lease to be accepted from Mrs. Cook. At the end of her 1-year lease, Mrs. Cook departed, and Mr. James Joseph Pannell of Katoomba, being the only one to make an offer to the mayor and town clerk, became the new proprietor for 10 shillings per week. Mr. Pannell was an enterprising man. He had been the superintendent of the fire brigade, and when he announced the construction of a new kiosk in February of 1913, everybody hoped his venture would prove highly profitable. He calculated upon a public opening for the 1st of October later that year. Before long, a brand new Union Jack floated proudly over the construction of a new kiosk at the end of Leura Falls Point. The substantial framework was finished, ready for the reception of the asbestos slate roofing and glass sashes which were to surround the very fine veranda facing Leura Gap, Leura Gorge and the new road from town. On the 10th of December 1913, the new kiosk was opened to coincide with the opening of the Katoomba and Leura municipal baths, situated above the meeting of the waters. We saw those in episode 16 as well. But all things do not always come to a happy ending. Suffering from a nervous breakdown and plagued with financial difficulties, due initially to no Sunday trading and unable to legally sell ice cream and chocolate, on the morning of Sunday, the 70th of January 1915, James Joseph Pannell, the proprietor of the Leura Falls kiosk, was found dead, with a bullet wound to the head and a revolver lying by his side. We know nothing of what happened to the kiosk during the following 15 years. In 1930, tenders were again invited for the leasing of the kiosk. It's likely Mrs. Pannell continued on as proprietress of the Leura Falls kiosk for many of those years. Mrs. Pannell was reported to have died at her daughter's home in Blaney in 1931. Following proprietors in order include Mrs. M. E. Chapman, Mrs. Annie Glover, Mr. E. E. Brown, Mrs. V. M. Houseman, and Mrs. Arnold Wright up to 1945. If you haven't guessed by now, the solitary restaurant here on Cliff Drive is Mr. Pannell's Leura Falls kiosk. It has been temporarily closed since 2019.
Now, on to Kiah Lookout. It is located on a bend along Cliff Drive and behind the solitary restaurant. As you may have noticed, Cliff Drive is a later addition to Leura Falls Point. Lookout is part of Prince Henry Cliff Walk and the only section where you now need to walk beside the road. A sandstone obelisk with a direction marker is a feature here. Kiah Lookout was named by William Farish Blakely, a botanist employed by the Botanical Gardens in Sydney and approved by Blue Mountain Shire Council in October 1934. Kiah is an Aboriginal word for beautiful place. Before walking far, we will come across fossil rock, an unusual rock formation, the type we have seen in previous episodes. It was discovered by Ranger Jim Mackay in 1902 and later gained notoriety when it was said to be a fossil. In 1936, in an effort to clear up the matter, the Katoomba Council contacted the Secretary of the Australian Museum, who advised that Mr. H.O. Fletcher, Assistant Paleontologist of the museum, would inspect the formation. After the examination, the Director of the Australian Museum advised that the supposed fossil near Leura Falls Kiosk was not a fossil or of organic origin. He went on to say iron in some form of solution migrated from one part of the rock to another where deposition of iron salts took place. Oxidation of these salts formed iron oxide and caused local hardening. A portion of rock from which iron was removed in solution became soft, then weathered, causing rapid removal of softened rock, and harder portions stood out in relief, creating curious shapes often mistaken for fossils. I think tourists would like to see a fossil.
Copeland Lookout is not far now, but before we get there,
Copeland Lookout is located at the end of a small ridge which divides Leura Falls Creek from Linda Creek. A 150 metre long sidetrack off the Prince Henry Cliff Walk leads to this stone-walled lookout. The lookout is named after William Rayburn Copeland, 1855 to 1928.
Ah, look at that.
Copeland moved to Katoomba around 1885 and on 30th of May 1889 bought a large parcel of land which he subdivided and built houses. His main occupation was builder and later storekeeper and produce merchant.
In July of 1892, the trustees of the Katoomba Reserves held a meeting at the Carrington Hotel to decide what improvements should be made in Leura Glen. It was envisaged a track should be formed from the Amphitheatre below Leura Falls Point to go through the stone tunnel and hence to the foot of the lower Leura Falls, which were virtually in the Jamison Valley. Ooh, where's the fencing? For most of us who know nothing about the Amphitheatre and the tunnel, I'll read you what was published in the Sydney Morning Herald on Friday the 27th of January 1893. Is an interesting rock formation like the other one. The amphitheatre is an immense and shapely hollow in the rocks, measuring 18 to 30 metres in width, with a height of about 30 metres. It resembles in shape a clamshell or peacock's tail, there being a recess at the base, the apex bending forward and over the visitor. We keep on going down the pathway until an immense body of rock seemingly arrests our progress. Have we missed our way? The trustee has been before us, and in a corner to the right hand we spy an irregular and downward aperture through the sandstone. An index board reminds us this is the tunnel. It is hardly a tunnel, and yet it would be hard to find a more appropriate name. In a long distant age, during some convulsion of nature, huge boulders, each weighing many tons, were hurled down the chasm. The first of these in its course got jammed between the two walls of rock. The others lie over it, and in position they have been for centuries. One little opening was left at the back of the lowermost block, and the trustees have constructed ladders down this, thus affording a means of descent. For the following 17 years, the forming of the Amphitheatre walking track opened up some of the finest scenery on the Blue Mountains, as it passed through lovely fern gullies, and from the bottom the cliffs could be seen towering overhead some 450 metres high. But tragedy struck below Copeland Lookout on Sunday the 14th of February 1909, when at about 10 o'clock in the morning hundreds of tons of rock and earth fell from just below the lookout, going below the amphitheatre, covering up the footpath and taking the trees and the famous tunnel with it. the amphitheatre and the tunnel were never the same again. Oh look, there's the Bridalvale Falls.
Our next stop is Bridalvale Lookout, and again it is on a side track of 55 metres off Prince Henry Cliff Walk between Majestic Lookout and Fossil Rock. From Kiah Lookout, proceed down the walking track past Fossil Rock. At 100 metres, turn right to reach the lookout at 155 metres.
That's the way we came, under the rock, and this is the way we're going. Oh, that wasn't far. Oh, look at the black cockatoo. Hello, cocky. Sitting on that branch up there.
Oh, wow.
Is he going to fly off? Oh, look at this right here. I'm going to see how close I can get. Oh, look at that. That's full frame. And he hasn't moved. Isn't that wonderful? Too busy eating. Don't worry about us.
Previous names for the lookout were Bridalvale View, the Rail Point and Leura Rail Lookout.
The name, the Railed Point, was a generic name given to vantage points that were fenced, but before they were gifted with a name. In a publication called The Methodist, in December of 1895, is this explanation. Railed points of rock give you safe opportunities of looking over the wild, wooded, silent ravines and gullies, bathing your mind in the mighty silence and drinking in the sublimity of the wild scene. Then steps and carefully prepared paths make it as easy as is possible under the circumstances to get down into the lovely glens, delightful shades and thick growth of forest trees, the undergrowth of ferns and tree ferns and flowering plants.
With that lookout out of the way, we're walking back to the Prince Henry Cliff Walk to continue to Majestic Lookout. That is also on a side track of about 30 metres off Prince Henry Cliff Walk. As previously from Kiah Lookout, walk down the walking track past Fossil Rock at 100 metres, turn left at 320 metres, take the upper track at 360 metres, turn right to reach the lookout at 400 metres.
It is said that this lookout provides great, perhaps even majestic views out through the top of the valley of lush forest lands, jagged cliff tops and towering Mount Solitary nicely framed by the cliff line. From all accounts, this lookout has not been maintained and might be in the process of being rebuilt or even decommissioned. We'll see. Nice and cool down here. Ooh. They haven't put new steps in here. I thought these were cool enough. Going down. Whee. Getting a bit wet. Ah, here we are. This is one of Jeff's rustic walking paths. Look, there's the landslide we were told about. We must have missed the turn-off. Let's go back and investigate. Whoop. Well, this is no walking track. It certainly looks like this lookout has been discarded. And for some time. No real path exists now. Aha! Guess what I found? And it's even got a sign. And there's a seat and all. Jeffrey can sit down. Now look at this. This is wonderful. We got a ladder. Why they said this is majestic, and you will appreciate this, because Mount Solitary is framed between the cliffs.
Yeah, I get that.
That's why they said it's majestic.
Yeah, good.
All of that's Mount Solitary. I'm so pleased we got this view. Fear it will be lost soon.
Yeah.
Look at that crevice there. It looks like it's just been cut out.
Can you see the falls from there?
Yeah. We're right above them.
Why is that, Graham?
You can see why they don't want people coming down here. It's fallen to bits.
Yeah.
The Leura cascades were lit even before Katoomba Echo Point was lit.
Wow.
And it almost went down to the top of the falls.
Majestic Lookout.
We visited 4 places today: Kiah Lookout, Copeland Lookout, Bridalvale Lookout, Majestic Lookout, and 2 additional locations: the panoramic view from the Solitary Restaurant and Fossil Rock. You can do that all in one day, but take your time and enjoy the fresh air, the sunshine, the outdoors, the wonderful vistas, but most of all, stay safe by familiarising yourself with our safety instructions at the end of this episode.
In our next episode, we drive through Katoomba to 2 lookouts at Fernbower and then down the valley to 3 waterfalls. Till then, bye!
Bye. Thanks for watching.
Whatever way you discover the Blue Mountains, we want you to have a safe and enjoyable experience. Whether you drive, catch public transport, or cycle to the destinations we visit here, some walking is necessary. The walks are usually short, but can contrast greatly, so you need to be aware of the risks. Have a safe and enjoyable sightseeing experience at these lookouts and waterfalls. Don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell to be alerted when next we visit the Blue Mountains.